Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast, where we dive deep into the DNA of leadership, innovation, and impact. I am your host, Dr. Jelani Reed. On today's episode, we are joined by Aneshia Beach, a dynamic force in Trinidad and Tobago's creative and professional landscapes. With a background in communications, spanning entrepreneurship, spanning costume design, and public service, Aneshia embodies dedication, versatility, and passion. She's driven to empowering the next generation through sustainable initiatives. Aneshia, it is our pleasure to have you. This is the Blueprint of Miss Aneshia Beach.
Thank you so much, Jelani, for having me this morning. And I know this is long overdue, but I'm very, very excited to be here.
Excellent. And how have your morning been so far?
Oh, hectic. As my mornings usually are. I could take you through it. Usually I'll be at the gym at about 6 a.m. So I'll get up about 4 and then prepare my day, get to the gym, get back home, then head to my office, and then I came across here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. and I see the plug for gym because our last guest was a coach.
Oh,
and
really?
I feel it's time for me to get back in gym.
Yes,
life.
I am an advocate for wellness, mainly due to my personal health. I'm asthmatic. So as a child, there's always this mindset. I mean, you're a doctor. So there's a lot of people, there's a misconception that if you have asthma, you're not supposed to be active and whatnot. And that is untrue.
Correct.
You should be more active.
That's correct.
To increase your lung capacity and whatnot. So yes. So I have always been an advocate for health, wellness, being as active as possible. I have a history of osteoporosis and arthritis in my family. So just ensuring that your joints are working well. I've always been an advocate for that. So yes.
So probably just now is Dr. Beach.
Well, in one capacity, not in the medical field, but in one capacity, yes, it will be Dr. Beach eventually.
Nice.
Yes.
So Aneshia,
Yes.
we always like to start our podcast to really get to the roots of, we know Aneshia in 2025.
Yes.
But we want to find out what about Aneshia's childhood that would have informed who she is today. So how was your childhood like?
So I was born in San Fernando. I was born in the 80s, I'm a little older, I'm not really a youth. So I was born in 1986 in Monrepo, San Fernando. I am the fifth of 6 children, and I was raised by my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother. So yes, matriarchal household. I would have started, as I said, I'm an asthmatic, so I would have spent my formative years in and out of the hospital. I was always a very active child, very outgoing, very talkative. I would have attended a primary school that was not really a prestigious primary school, but it was one where my mother could have afforded to send us. So that would have really informed my childhood, where I was in a space that the children there were not from any sort of fortunate background. There were a lot of poor children that attended the school, but children that were also from a mixed income background too. And I think that allowed me to see society from a different sphere. Entering secondary school, I attended Koki Government Primary School, St. Stephen's College. That gave me a well-rounded appreciation for education, because that school would have taught me they aren't only focused on academics. It's a 7-year school in South, but they also are very focused on the development of soft skills. So you have to maintain some level of integrity. They were very strict on discipline, honesty, and I think that would have propelled me even further. So I was always an outspoken child in primary school, secondary school. I used to get in a lot of trouble, but not for fighting, but just for responding. So I was always talkative. I always used to, if I felt that there was some injustice or something in a classroom setting, I would speak out. I would be the loudest voice. And I think then, because of that, I was always disciplined by my teachers, by my peers, by my older siblings, by my parents. And from there, entering into university at UE, I wanted to be a teacher because I saw how discipline would have impacted me. And I really wanted to help other young people just be guided by, you can't have a high academic outlook, but you also must be guided by your integrity. You should be outgoing, you should be multifaceted, but you must maintain some sort of discipline. So entered university, left university in 2008, started teaching at the MUDSEC, that's San Fernando Central Secondary, in 2008 actually. So yes, September 2008, I started teaching at St. Stephen's, fully into the teaching service. So I went back to my alma mater, St. Stephen's, in 2010. Then from 2010 to 2015, I taught English communication studies. From there, got actively involved in politics. And the reason why I would have gotten involved in politics was because I would have seen between 2010 and 2015 what was happening to the youth programs. The youth programs that I knew were fundamental, they started to shut down between 2010 and 2015. And and in my community of Monrepo, you were seeing the direct impact of these programs that were being curtailed. And I really wanted to get involved in politics, not from I know there's a misconception of politics, as we all know, but I wanted to get actively involved to let people know, hey, there are a lot of programs and a lot of issues that plague our society that once you get involved in politics, you can help people. And so I would have left teaching in 2015 to work as a research officer at the San Fernando East Constituency Office. From there, 2015 to 2020. 2021, worked at the constituency office, managed it in 2020 to 2021, and then 2022, and then I joined the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service.
Plenty.
Yes, between there, my mom was always involved in MAS. She was an assistant band leader, so I eventually became involved in MAS. In 2013, we formed our own band, Beach and Associates. I was always involved in sports and liked to get other young people involved in health and wellness and whatnot. And yeah.
So plenty to unpack.
Yeah.
So first, we have to big up St. Stephen's College.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and because many of your life lessons were taught there.
Yes.
But you have a unique upbringing, which is that you were brought up by your mom, grandmother, and great-grandmother.
Yes.
What was that experience?
It was interesting because like my great-grandmother, she is originally from Grenada, then they moved to Chatham, which is deep South Trinidad, and then they came to Monrepo. So they have a very strict method of discipline, but they were always big on legacy. They were great believers in ensuring that the next generation did better than them, and they were always open and telling us stories of their childhood. So I love the fact that my great-grandmother, she was a house cleaner or whatnot. She used to be a living maid for persons. Then my grandmother was a seamstress. My mother, she was raised in the US for a while, came back, and she was a GIS officer, which is more or less like a male-dominated field. She worked at WASA until her retirement. And then, so they were very strict, but they were always open. And they were always open in telling us, hey, we don't want you going down this road because of, they were not just doing it like, hey, this is what I'm telling you, and this is what it must be. They were telling us, this is what we want to see for you. We were also raised heavily in church, but it was a strange thing because we were raised heavily in church. We would have prayer meetings and prayer services at our house, but carnival time, the one Sunday we were allowed to miss church was Carnival Sunday because we had to play mass. Yeah. And my grandmother, she was a huge person in church, huge advocate for church and whatnot, but she also said that we were citizens of Trinidad. So she would make sure that we would not miss our mass. She would sew for the band. She would ensure that we knew about Calypso. We would not miss anything, even watching the Marsh Gras on a Sunday night, watching every Calypso competition. with those things, getting ourselves involved in every aspect of local culture, that was very important to us. So yes, it was an interesting
time growing up.
Yeah.
You know, there is a scripture that says, train a child
Yes.
so that when he grows, he will not depart from
definitely.
it. And, you know, it's interesting as we kind of dive into your background and your
Yes.
childhood, it informs exactly who you are today.
Yes, it does.
Disciplined, your focus on the characteristics of being an individual.
Yes.
And even the spheres of participating in life. The
Yes.
creatives, the teaching. And funny enough, you know, as an individual, I've always wanted to be a teacher. I enjoy teaching.
Yes.
Because teaching facilitates, as you would have experienced, the opportunity to facilitate individuals being the best version of themselves.
Yes,
You
definitely.
understand? And that's why, me personally, I don't think that we pay our teachers enough.
No, we don't. We don't. We don't. So, and I always talk about that because people look at the salary of a teacher and they say you all get paid vacations and your salary is decent, but it really isn't that great. And I remember when I first left teaching, my salary was, I think, the exact same as when I was a teacher, but I did not have to use out of my resources. So I had my take home, quote unquote, would have been greater.
Yes.
Because you want to encourage your children. So sometimes you find yourself buying posters, paying for, you would have some children who are vulnerable, you would pay for things for them. You want to give them some rewards, you will purchase rewards for them. You have a class party, simple things like that.
Correct.
You want to ensure that they have something. And as you know, like St. Stephen's is a board-assisted school. So the resources that come quicker to a government school, they do not get it. So you have to raise funds as much as possible.
Correct.
And when you're in a rural area, some of the children really don't get as many opportunities as the others. So sometimes teachers would pull resources even to purchase clothes for graduation. Those things people do not see on a daily basis. And teachers are really underappreciated.
Yes.
Grossly underappreciated.
And as an individual growing up, I would attest that many of those levels or stages of my life where I would have achieved something, I know for a fact that is because I stood on the shoulders of my teachers.
Yes.
They're the ones that supported me. I even remember distinctly at QRC when I was down for a student elections and my geography teacher, big up Miss Skinner, she saw me in class and she said, "Read what Jelani were going on." And I didn't respond. And she said, "Listen, you are going to allow a junior person have you feeling like that?" Nah. And you know, that brief conversation is what propelled me to do what it is that I had to do.
Yes.
Anyway, off of that. So, Aneshia, you are somebody that is in the creative industry.
Yes.
Right? And before we get into the full conversation about that, it is clear that you didn't wake up one morning to become a creative, right? You would have been heavily influenced by your family, your mom, you understand, and being a seamstress. How was that? What was your first exposure to the creative industry and, the creatives? And how has that informed the person that you are today?
So my first exposure probably... as far back as I could remember, my grandmother, she would allow us, she was a seamstress, so she would have allowed us to learn how to sew like dolls' clothes and whatnot. And then everybody would have to learn to sew by the age of 10 or 11, around that age. But I remember my mom used to do mass for this band leader, Leslie Bob. And I think when I was in secondary school, we used to play mass all the time, and sometimes we would visit mass camp. I remember her leaving work, finishing work. She used to work at Wassa St. Joseph, come to South, then head straight to the mass camp, then come back home, probably like after midnight, and that would have been a cycle for the carnival season. However, when I was in secondary school, she started to bring home pieces of mass for me to do, for us to work on. So sometimes she would, because I would beg her, I was like, "I want to come, I want to help, I want to do something." She said she wouldn't want me in the mass camp because then I'll miss school the next day. But she would bring home pieces for me to start to like dots or put some sequins on or run some braid on some. And that is when I was really exposed to it and I was really interested in it. When I got older, I said, I want to help out. I want to help. I want to help. I want to do something. And then from there, it just grew. So I went to UE, was involved in campus carnival with this band Lacqueray. And after I left UE, when my mom, we decided, all of our siblings, we said, we are no longer in school, we will help you. Yeah, we just decided to bring out our own band. Yeah.
Yes. So let's understand this, right? So we have young Aneshia,
Yes.
who is going through the traditional path, career. Then Aneshia would have pivoted to become a teacher,
Yes.
an entrepreneur, an office manager,
Yes.
and as well as somebody who has produced costumes and has established her own band.
Yes.
So Aneshia is all over the place,
All over.
but in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way,
Yes.
right? So my question is, how do you? First things, is it that you always knew that these are the things that you were going to get yourself involved in?
I asked myself that question often because there were always signs that this is the space I want to be in, especially when it comes to creativity. I'm also a stage manager. So there were things where I know for sure that I never like to sit still. I always like to work with young people, even as a child. So there are certain things I always want to do. I always want to be a creative. I always want to be part of any production. And I always want to work with young people. Like my primary school teacher, she passed this year, Mrs. Bruce. She's in my standard 5 teacher. Children would get in trouble in my class. And she would buff them. They would get licks. And then I would go after, like around recess time, to tell her, you didn't need to speak to them this way. Yes. So I was always an advocate for them. And she would run me at first. And I remember at the end of Standard 5, I got a prize for being the backbone of the school. Like if they it was literally the prize. The prize was about, they found somebody. There was a child who was always the advocate and the spokesperson for the children.
Yes.
and my siblings would laugh and say I got a prize for being in other people's business. But it was more or less me always wanted to be an advocate for young people. Me always wanted to be involved in the creative space and always wanted to just be part of a production. So I'd be in Sandfest, I would write plays.
Right.
Yeah. So my path has always been geared toward those three things.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have established yourself to be recognized in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
In the creative industry.
Yes.
Now, and most importantly, at least for this segment, is about the communications aspect of it.
Yes.
And about personal branding. So how would you describe your personal brand today?
My personal brand is based on, I'm always very particular about the messaging that I put out there. It is always about advocating for young persons, but I always try to make myself as why am I at a loss of words now? But making it easy for people to connect with me. So I don't ever want to seem as though I'm standoffish. I always want people to feel as though I'm open to communicate with, and that has always been my personal brand. I'm always seen as professional, but I don't want people to feel as though there's no way to connect with me, and that has been the basis of my personal brand. Yes, and I have made it a point to not present myself as anything too obscene or anything where people, even though I'm involved, I could say I'm involved in politics, but because of my background, I have friends from different spaces. So they understand and they respect. I do not hide, who I am, but I don't make people feel as though they are uncomfortable to reach out to me, no matter what space they are in.
So why is that important for you and your personal brand?
Because of the space that I would have been raised as well as my background. I am from a household where my mother was an NAR, my uncle is a union leader, my grandfather was part of the Black Power movement, but yet they have all found ways. I have family members. My great aunt is My great aunt is a Donowa. My cousin is Rondell Donowa. So I have family members who are from different spaces. Yet we have always met at a middle ground. We have always been able to just mesh and meld. So I think because of that, I have always positioned myself in that way.
I understand.
Yes.
So branding is the big thing now.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And anybody in 2025 who wants to establish themselves, probably the first advice that they get, deal with your branding.
Yes.
How does one go about establishing themselves in the branding concept?
Be authentic, first of all. They have to outline who they are. And it doesn't have to be rigid, but you have to, I always say, map who you are and who you want to present yourself as. So, but it has to come from an authentic space, but it doesn't have to be rigid because people are finding themselves. And you don't want to be in a space where you are just, this is who I am, this is set in stone. You want to always show that you are human, you are growing and you are building, but you are authentic in your growth and your presentation. But it always starts with ironing, just start with you putting it down on paper, who you are and who you intend to be, who you intend to present yourself as.
So what about those situations where you have put yourself as your authentic self? You have built, you have done your mapping,
Yes.
you have done your social media handles, everything correct. And 2 days after you have posted yourself, the hate messages come.
Yeah.
The accusations of, oh, you're trying to be something that you're not, or you're presenting yourself today as this professional in 2025.
Yes.
But 10 years ago, I know you were whatever it was, you know? How does a young person, what was the advice that you'd give to young people having to navigate through this environment?
So you always have to be mindful of who you are. Just being mindful of who you are. You can accept your mistakes, accept your flaws. Don't pretend as though it didn't happen. But you can also present where your transformation occurred. The hate comments will come. It will come. The more popular you are, it will come. But once you are authentic in who you are, it will come, but it will die down. And you can always manage your space as well. Manage your online space, So what I realize is not only in Trinidad, but throughout the world, there's a type of copycat culture that exists. So if one person starts to present negativity on your page and other people feel that they are comfortable to present negativity on your page, they will do it as well. I personally say my online presence is also a sort of dictatorship where you need to now manage what people put on your page. So there's criticism, there's constructive criticism, and then there's outright negativity. You could remove that from your page, You could just remove it and allow an open space for conversation, but still monitor what people are saying. So if there are videos floating around of you in a compromising quote-unquote position, you can respond to it, definitely. But don't harp on it and don't make people feel as though they can still project whatever their insecurities are about their past or present onto you. That is not who you are anymore. And if you answer it once and move on. I always say that. Don't focus on it because that is not who you are anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess from that, what the listeners can pull out from is that it is okay to pivot. It is okay. Yeah.
I always tell people that. Like, I remember when I was teaching at St. Stephen's and when I was about to leave, I remember some of the teachers saying, but this girl is mad. Why is she leaving teaching? And, this is something that is stable. You're set up for the rest of your life. But then there were some other teachers who taught me as well, who were pulling me to the side and asking me, how were you able to do this? They want to leave the teaching service, they can't, etc. And for all of the people who were saying that I'm crazy and whatnot, I was also encouraged by the people who were wondering how I was able to do it. And I started to tell even some of my students, I was telling them, it's okay to change your mind, But just make sure you have a plan.
Yes.
Yes. Just make sure while you are doing this and you want to change, make sure you have something set up for your change so that it's going to be scary no matter what you do, but at least you'll have some comfort in knowing that you have a plan set and that will change as well. Yeah. I did not know that I was going to work with young people in this capacity. From the beginning, I just thought I wanted to be a teacher like my old teachers who was helping me. And when I realized there was more that I wanted to do in the youth space, apart from teaching, that is when I decided to pivot. So there's nothing wrong with pivoting at all.
So what about, so you have Aneshia with
Yes.
this stable job,
Yes.
right? And you, which is the normal thing, you would get advice from all over the place. But at the end of the day, Aneshia has to make the decision.
Yes.
How was that experience? Because that usually is the most nerve-wracking thing for any individual.
So actually, you and I are speaking at a point where I am going to make a transition career-wise. And I have always said, especially over the last few years, that I really want to get further into my career as a band leader, and as a creative enterprise, stage manager. I've been professionally trained. There's so much that I've done over the last. I'm professionally trained in broadcasting and hosting, and over the last 2 years, I've just been called to host things. I just left that in the past because it's something that I have done and I have it as a
Been
skill.
there, done that.
Yeah, and because I've just been called over and over to host events, I said I just put it in the back window because I simply had no time because there's only 24 hours in a day, but I wanted to push further into it. So at this juncture, I'm actually going to take a chance on myself to leave the space of government work and being having a stable income to pursuing the creative sector 100%. So it has been nerve-wracking for me, but again, I feel comfort in the fact that knowing that I have laid a foundation where I have a lot of training in all of the spaces that I occupy and that I have a plan. So that transition, it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Nice. And you have heard it right here on the Blueprint podcast. Yeah. That's nice. So, Aneshia, what is one misconception that people have about creatives?
Yes, one misconception is that they have no insight into financial planning and that they're all over the place. Too. But I think, especially when it comes to the carnival industry, there's always been a misconception that these persons, they earn their money and just throw it away. And what I have seen is an evolution in that we have persons like Marshall Montano, who has created a blueprint. Sparrow actually would have been one of the first persons to really push the agenda of ensuring that Calypsonians are financially secure. And we're seeing that now in the soca industry. We're seeing it in the mass industry where mass men and women are now taking their craft outside of Trinidad and Tobago and taking their craft outside of just the carnival space. And they are using it to say, we have older mass men, the late Stephen Derrick, we have Peter Minshall, etc., who would have used their creativity to create work on movie sets and create work for an international standard. And that is where you're seeing people who have become more financially stable and not depending on government handouts, as people often assume that creatives do.
So tell me something. Given that, what do you think the future of the creative industry, what should the future of the creative industry look like in Trinidad and Tobago?
Honestly, I mean, I am a little bit biased, but I know that we focus on sports, tourism, and whatnot. And I always say the entertainment sector is one of our greatest exports. Trinidad and Tobago's entertainment sector is bar none, especially in the Caribbean. So I really see the creative industry taking over in terms of influencing all facets of our lives. We have, say for instance, social media right now it has a huge impact on all spheres. You're a doctor, you want to promote your services, you will need a content creator. More likely than not, a content creator is involved in the creative industry. They are part of the orange economy. Correct. They are needed in all spheres. I also see that people have become now huge advocates for paying a living wage for our creatives. I was very pleased when I saw Clipsonians and even panmen and whatnot advocating for no longer being looking for exposure or just working for exposure. I'm seeing people become more and more vocal about that. They want to get a living wage. They want to ensure that they are paid well for their services. So I really am seeing the creative industry just taking over in all spheres of our lives. Yes.
You know, during Carnival this year, it was brought to my attention that those of our countrymen who participate in stick fighting, they don't have insurance.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes. They don't, and that is a high risk.
Yes.
so yes, and the stick fighting, and I don't know if you have noticed, but stick fighting has grown so much. The crowds that we are massed for stick fighting finals is amazing.
Yes.
So yes, those things, just education is absolutely needed for our persons, our creatives in all spheres. Yes.
Yeah. So, Aneshia, what is one project or one campaign in the creative industry that reflects best your values?
That's a good question. One project or campaign that is right now.
That you have ever done in the past as well.
Okay. More or less the work that I do with my band. Yes, because I have a children's band, and what we really advocate for is education through Carnival. So it's not only just letting them put on pretty costumes and pray through the streets. It's allowing them, through every one of our portrayals, allowing them to learn something new about Trinidad. Because I often say I did my master's in Carnival Studies in 2014, and I learned much more about Trinidad's history through that than I did when I did history, when I did local history and whatnot. So yes, just the what we have been doing, and we're going to, because of time, I really didn't get to focus on it as much, but I would have done some small workshops in the past with my children. So that is a huge undertaking for me, where I would have partnered with Funclair Steel Orchestra and had some of my children from the camp visit the pan side and learn to play pan. In fact, one of my masqueraders, he would have started with Funclair learning to play pan, then he moved on to Skiffle Bunch, then in Standard 4, he was the captain of Boys RC junior pan side, and they won Panorama this year, Junior Panorama. Yes, and he is the captain. Yes.
Nice. I understand. Nice.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to pivot.
Yes.
Right? And so apart from your background, apart from teaching, apart from getting involved in culture, and let me just say getting involved, and being a creative.
Yes.
You have also shaped the landscape in policy direction.
Yes.
So you would have served in the Youth Agriculture Homestead program. What is the role that you play in that program?
At first I was the stakeholder relations coordinator, and then in 2023 became the program coordinator of the Youth Agriculture Homestead program. And what I would have done is coordinate all stakeholders who were key in ensuring that this program was carried out as efficiently as possible. So as some may not know, the Youth Agriculture Homestead program was developed in 2022. Well, 2021 we got cabinet approval. In 2022 is when it first began, where you allow training for young persons between the ages of 18 to 35 in agricultural certification. And then from there, they would receive training from NEDCO on entrepreneurial development, and DevCo in good agricultural practices. Once they were successful or are successful, they would receive 2 acres of land, a home on that land, as well as a $20,000 grant. What a lot of people were not aware of is how many stakeholders were necessary to ensure that this program was successful. So of course you have NEDCO, you have NAMDEVCO, Ministry of Youth Development is the key ministry involved. But since we are the policymakers and the projects coordinators, we would need other persons to ensure that all aspects of it were carried out. So we have the LSA through Ministry of Housing, we have Ministry of Planning, we also have MIC, the UTT who facilitated the training, and we have a number of other external stakeholders like the World Food Program. There's we were also in talks with working with some of our Caribbean partners as well in Jamaica and St. Vincent to really develop a greater regional cohesion. Okay. So yes, my role was more or less advocating for this program throughout, letting other countries, other islands know about the program, other organizations, the FAO, etc., know about the program, but also ensuring that all of our stakeholders, including our students, work together to ensure its success.
So in first world countries such as the United States and in European countries, agriculture is seen as not as it is seen, unfortunately, in our side of the world, well, in the Caribbean, as a pastime, or you then get your subject, so you go to do agriculture. In these first world countries, they see it as the backbone of their economy.
Yes.
The agriculture is literally the food basket for your people to eat.
Yes.
What were some of the challenges, or what are some of the challenges young people face that prevents them from getting involved in agriculture?
You said it yourself. It's the perception of what a farmer is or who a farmer is. I mean, especially for, say, my generation, we were taught that the priority is to get a good job. And a good job was something that is stable in an office, or probably becoming a doctor, an engineer, a teacher, and whatnot. And I think because our focus was so heavily reliant on the oil and gas sector, and we were spoiled in Trinidad by the US dollar so much that we really fell in love with imports. So even Trinidad, compared to other islands, what we consume here is heavily reliant on imports. So working in agriculture wasn't something that we didn't see it as a priority. And young people especially, they were taught not to see it as a priority. That's one. Two, a lot of young people don't have access to land. So what we would have realized is that there are young people who are in urban spaces who are really interested in agriculture. But because they are in spaces, like, say, for instance, we had some students who's from St. Paul Street. They have no access to arable land. So they were interested, but they just had no way of expanding their craft. So that is a major challenge that some of them would have had. Some of them were just not exposed to information. And then there's the societal issue where people just don't see young people as valuable members of society. So I remember when the program was launched, the ministry got a lot of backlash because there were people who were older who were coming to us saying that these young people are just going to waste your money, they're just going to waste your time. And they are telling us that, and chances are they are telling young people that as well. They're saying that they are not going to use it. We have older people who are more than willing to cultivate that land. And I found that if they are telling us this, then that is a message that is being sent out to these young people. So there are so many factors that were just working against them. It felt as though we were just fighting a losing battle, just getting them involved in agriculture.
So what has been one of the what have been one of the proudest moments since being a part of the program for you?
There were so many, but there is several. Okay, so there are two instances. There's one young man, Mark Borneo in particular. He's always developing hybrid seeds right in his area of Lupino, and with this training, he would have been exposed to a lot more concepts. And even with agri-entrepreneurship, it would have opened his mind to how far this can go. And I remember in October of last year, during the Caribbean Week of Agriculture, he found himself in St. Vincent as well. Yes, because he started to become so adept at what's going on with regard to the region and internationally. He just became very, very much interested. And he found himself in St. Vincent as well during the Caribbean Week of Agriculture and started to speak to other ministers about the work that he was doing in Trinidad, finding different types of seeds that were adaptable to our climate, that would reduce the number of fertilizers and whatnot and chemicals that he would use. So him just doing that and forging different relationships with those persons allowed him to then come back to Trinidad this year, in February of this year, and approach the ministry to state that as soon as the program expands, he will be able to then produce seeds through his work that he is doing. Through Chatham, he would be able to produce seeds for some of the trainees there as well, for them free of charge, for them to do their work, yes.
That is a proud moment.
There's also a young person who is from Laventille. At first, he would have experienced a number of challenges just getting to class. And it got to a point where he couldn't even return to his family and return to his community because he had a number of social issues. And at one point in time, we thought we were going to lose him to it and we wouldn't have been able to find him. But he ended up staying at EKF campus and he was able to successfully complete the program. And he is on his way to getting his home at Chatham.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So, Aneshia, young people are a bit hesitant in today's society to really offer themselves for public service.
Yes.
And when I say public service, I don't necessarily mean politics, but giving of themselves to the nation. But there is a gap, and there seems to be a wall that prevents them. How can we break down that wall and encourage more young persons to get involved in public service, public sphere of life?
I really just think it is based on how we speak to young people and how we treat with them. I think, because based on my own personal experience, it was due to meeting with different persons of authority throughout my life. My former teacher would have influenced me to get into teaching. I had a former basketball coach who would have allowed me to really expand my horizons, go to Jamaica and whatnot. And then because of him, I want to really start to work with other young people. I think I think sometimes we have an issue where we know that we would have gotten some assistance as young people, and then some of us, when we get into a space where we can also help or even just communicate with young people, we just don't. It's a very strange thing, and it allows for a gap. And I think what we can do is just start a conversation with them. You would be amazed at how many young people are looking on at us unconsciously, and you wouldn't even be aware of how much your work is impacting them. And just having a conversation with them would allow them to see, hey, this is what I can be doing. Some of them, I have realized that there is a gap because they feel as though it is an exclusive club that they can't be a part of. And only when they realize that there is an opening or there is some sort of inclusivity, then they would want to be a part of it. So you have a podcast here, allowing some more young people to come in, even those who may not seem as though they are as outstanding as others. I think that would allow for more people to feel as though, they can achieve something.
Yes.
They can be included in public life. That is...
So I'll go to seize the opportunity one time because actually we have a segment that is going to be rolling out shortly called Blue Stories. And that's exactly what you have just said is exactly what we intend to do, where we will not necessarily bring them on set, but we want to go where they are.
Yes.
And to tell their story, to demonstrate that leadership is not only the individual that stands behind a podium to talk to a country.
Yes.
A single mother who makes a determination that she is going to sacrifice to ensure that her children has a better life.
Yes.
That is leadership. Or an individual who has decided that, listen, I do not want to be in a life of crime because that's what I grew up in. I prefer to sell water at the side of the street. Or while selling the water, I'm saving up to purchase a worker to go out and bring in honest income. That is leadership as well. So the whole purpose of it is really to tell those stories. So we have reached the part in our podcast where we like to get to know our guests a little bit more.
Okay.
And we call it Rapid Blue. So I'm going to ask you some questions.
Yes.
And the first, I don't want you to think too much on it, right? The first thought that comes to mind, that's what we want to hear.
Okay.
All right? Tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right. So a beach day or carnival night?
Carnival night.
Carnival.
Yes.
All right. So, best local food spot in Trinidad.
Dollar Bear Roti Shop in Vista Bella. Yes.
We have to go down there. I have to try that. And I know because the best doubles, best curry, best...
Everything is from South. Yes. Yes.
All right. So, dream collaboration. Anyone, anytime. Who would it be?
Oh my God. I would love to collaborate with one of the kings or queens of Carnival. Yes. To work on their costume. Yes.
Nice. So, favorite creative tool or app that you use right now?
Canva. Yes.
One thing that people wouldn't expect about you?
I can't ride a bike.
Anisha.
You see?
No, you have to fix
I
that.
can't.
What is one skill that you're learning right now?
There's so many. But I am actively learning how to sew again. Yes.
Nice. So, Anisha, if you could jump on a time machine and go back to see the young Anisha, the young schoolgirl Anisha, what advice would you give her?
I would, I don't know, I had such a good childhood, but I would say be more assertive in certain areas where, because I was always told that I talk too much and it's all going, there are certain areas where I would just pull back and not assert myself more. And I would just say be more assertive, even though I found that I was assertive, but I would just say be more assertive because,
basically get more in trouble.
Yes. It's a good trouble.
Good trouble. That's
yes.
correct. Okay, so we on the legacy part now. What is next? Actually, I want to keep that as a surprise for the guests.
Yes.
But in 5, 10, 15 years from now, where would you see Anisha?
I would see myself completing my doctorate. I want to get back into teaching, but lecturing. So completing my doctorate, get into lecturing and carnival studies, my band expanding, and just growing within the creative sector. So yes.
All right, excellent. So Anisha, if persons want to get in contact with you, how do they do that?
Or they can find me via social media. I'm at Aneshia Beach on all social media platforms. And yeah, that is the easiest way to get in contact with me, yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
All right, members of the Blueprints community and the Blueprints podcast, there you would have had it, the Blueprints story of Miss Aneshia Beach. And what we would have learned is it is okay to pivot.
Yes.
It is okay to put yourself out there. And even when the negatives come, which they would, you stand firm in who you are. The person that you were on Monday can be completely different to the person that you're on Tuesday and on Wednesday, because you recognize that it is just okay to redefine who you are and be your authentic self. And from today's episode, I want to encourage all our listeners, especially those dreamers. If you have some idea, some passion, or some goal that you want to achieve, this is the time. This episode demonstrates that this is the time where you should bet on yourself and put yourself out there. So until we meet again on the Blueprints, I am your host, Dr. Jelani Reid. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.